Alison Sargent joins me on the set for the press review today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
Lots of focus on one of our top stories today out of Israel. Two of Benjamin Netanyahu's rivals now teaming up to try and form a government and get him out of power.
That's right. Ultra-nationalist Naftali Bennett announced that he would try and form a government with centrist Yair Lapid. The Jerusalem Post calls it a potential national reset for Israel and asks if it's time to say welcome to the post-Netanyahu era. Now, if so, the paper writes that after 15 years and 75 days of Netanyahu in office, it will take time for Israelis to get used to the very notion that he won't be the one calling the shots anymore. Now, left-wing paper Haaretz reminds us that Israel has not been this close to replacing Netanyahu since 2009, but it's not a done deal yet. The paper explains that Bennett and Lapid will notably have to strike a deal with the United Arab List, which would be the first time that an Arab-Israeli party has ever made a deal with a coalition that includes right-wing parties. Now, to get a sense of the uncertainty in the coming days, Haaretz actually compares Naftali Bennett to a released spy in a Cold War prisoner exchange about to cross the dividing line, and the paper asks, will he make it to the other side?
It is a fascinating story that we're keeping a close eye on here on France 24. Okay, next, we're going to stay with the theme of politics. We're going to bring it back to France. The left-wing paper, Libération, is warning that the far right could win regional elections in a key region in the south known as PACA.
That's right, Jeannie. Now, PACA stands for Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur. It's the region that includes the city of Marseille, also Nice. And as we see in Libération's headline today, they've actually renamed it to Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Alert, alert, because the candidate from Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party, Thierry Mariani, he's the man you see there next to Marine Le Pen, he is leading in polls there for upcoming regional elections, which are in just a few weeks. According to Libération, if he wins, it will be the first time that Marine Le Pen's far-right party has ever won a regional presidency. And the paper ties the party's success there to the fact that the right-wing Les Républicains party allied with Macron's centrist party in the region. So that center-right alliance seems to potentially be pushing voters further to the far right. Libération reminds us that, if you're watching France's regional elections to try and get a sense of next year's presidential elections, well, then what's happening in PACA for the paper is reason to be alarmed.
Alison, there's a very somber anniversary that's being marked in the United States today. That's the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre.
That's right, Jeannie. It was one of the deadliest racist attacks in U.S. history. It happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in 1921. A white mob completely destroyed a black neighborhood. Somewhere between 30 and 300 people died. They don't actually know exactly how many. And yet, many Americans never learned about it in school. The New York Times notes that the Tulsa massacre has gone from being virtually unknown to being emblematic with impressive speed, notably in the wake of last year's racial justice protests. As somewhat of a reflection of that, the paper is reporting that there are numerous documentaries coming out about the massacre, a good occasion for people to get their history up to speed. One that they recommend is called Tulsa Burning, which is a joint production from CNN and History Films. Now, the three known survivors of this massacre actually recently testified to Congress. All of them were kids at the time. One of them is the woman that you see here in a wheelchair wearing that jersey, 107-year-old Viola Fletcher. She told Time magazine that she still sleeps sitting up on the couch with all of the lights on because she wants to be able to see who's coming in and out of the house. An anecdote that just clearly gets at the ongoing trauma that is surrounding this massacre.
Certainly is. All right, we've got a bit of a lighter note now. The British Prime Minister surprised the press actually by announcing that he and his fiancée were married over the weekend.
That's right. Happy newlyweds. Boris and Carrie Johnson really dominate the British front pages today. This was a surprise since they had reportedly sent out save the dates for a ceremony to be held next summer, so potentially tricking the press into not expecting this. Instead, they were married in the secret ceremony over the weekend at Westminster Cathedral. We read on the front page of The Independent, though, that they have delayed their honeymoon because of the pandemic. As The Guardian reports, this wedding has actually prompted criticism from some Catholic priests. They're questioning why Boris Johnson was allowed to get married at a Catholic church, since they point out he was divorced twice, so it's technically not allowed. The paper explains that actually because Boris Johnson's previous weddings were not Catholic and his previous wives were not Catholic, those weddings were able to be invalidated by a simple administrative process. So it's not great news for other divorced Catholics who are maybe hoping that they too could get married in a church.
There's always a loophole somewhere, huh? All right, Alison, let's wrap up now with a sad but a sweet story about a village in the Czech Republic that's been helping raise a family of storks.
That's right. this story starts out sad because the mother stork in this family was actually killed by an electrical line. But then the lovely part of the story is that the whole village in the Czech Republic stepped in to help the single dad and the 4 chicks that were left behind. As we read in French paper L'Union, an engineer and gardener from the village have been climbing all the way up to the nest to bring the birds food, things like fish, worms, and even mice. They've also installed a camera to keep an eye on the nest, and it's live streamed on YouTube if any viewers would like to find this article and check it out, and maybe you'll get lucky and see one of the feeding moments.
I admire the people who would climb up that high. That looks pretty scary. All right, Allison, thanks so much for that. Allison Sargent there with the press review today.